stories from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings literary trilogy, and that's basically all we know. Now, I think...
Don't give me hope, man. Don't give me hope, man. I love the Lotro. I love Lord of the Rings Online. It's a game that I often re-download and play for a day, and then undownload and re-download and repeat over the past, couple of years. I really want a good Lord of the Rings game, MMO specifically. I really hope but it's Amazon Games, dude. I hope they really turn their shit around, dude.
So in my last video, we covered the recent cancellation of Project Blackbird. The MMORPG ZeniMax Online Studios had been
really bummed. I hate to stop it right away, but I'm actually super bummed about that game being canceled. I know it didn't look the best or whatever, or even have the best, like it was ever going to come out, but I just love the idea of new MMOs coming out. I just hope the genre can just take off again.
Working on over these past 7 years. Now, due to my appreciation of The Elder Scrolls Online, which I will reiterate, it's a game that definitely makes it into my top 10 favorite MMOs list. And for that reason alone, I had been eagerly awaiting the reveal of the developer's next project. So learning of its cancellation, it was a bit of a bummer. So to help turn things around a bit and lighten up the mood, I thought this might be a good time to revisit some of the other MMOs that we know are currently in development, with the hope that maybe I can will these ones into existence, like having an incantation of sorts. Doesn't work that way? Oh well. I'll do the video anyways. So today what I want to do is give an updated look at the MMOs that I'm the most hopeful for and think have the greatest potential. And to be clear, this isn't just another video going over all of these games' proposed features and content. We've done that plenty of times in the past. Instead...
Hang on, just real second. What game is that, guys? Not there. Whatever. Fuck it. This one right here. What game is this? Does anyone know what game this is?
We've done that plenty of times in the past.
I want to know.
Instead, what I've done is gather up whatever public available information there is, specifically pertaining to how is the development going and what, if any, projected timelines do these games have? Like, when are we going to get to play them? So let's go ahead and talk about all of the upcoming MMOs that you can still look forward to, so long as these ones too don't get canceled sometime in the next 5 years. All right, starting things off, we've got Guild Wars 3. The game looks to currently be in early production, although as of now, our only
Ooh, that looks poopy. That doesn't look good.
Information is a casual reference by the publisher during an investor call back in 2024. At the time, NCSoft was getting grilled by their investors over the company's recent poor financials, to which they responded by saying, hey, we got some good stuff in the works. Of relevance here was this quote that said, ArenaNet has a meaningful IP called Guild Wars, and after Guild Wars 2, they are currently working on Guild Wars 3. So basically, they're saying, don't worry, guys, we got another Guild Wars in the pipeline. The stock portfolio is going to turn around soon. Now, beyond that,
what's crazy is that they just also released an expansion, we covered it yesterday, but my damn recording got corrupted somehow. But we covered it yesterday, and that they are having an upcoming expansion for Guild Wars 2. So that's crazy that they're doing that alongside Guild Wars 3.
There hasn't been any official announcement, no press release or anything of the sort for the game, just the acknowledgement that they are in the early stages of beginning work on the project. And it is evidently very, very early, because following reports of the game getting mentioned during that investor call, it was further clarified by the publisher that Guild Wars 3 was, quote, in the review stage and the start of development had not been finalized. Also, ArenaNet came out making a direct statement of their own, where they said, as an active game studio, we are always doing internal exploratory work for possible future titles we'd want to create. However, we have nothing to confirm right now. The team's focus is on Guild Wars 2 development, including the game's next expansion, which we're excited to talk about soon. Now, again, all of this was back in March 2024, so a little over a year ago, and we have not had any further updates about a new Guild Wars game being made since then. But even assuming that Guild Wars 3 is in, let's say, pre-production right now, we're likely looking at least 5 or more years from it seeing the light of day. As you may have heard, there is a new Lord of the Rings MMO in development as well, coming from Amazon Game Studio. Now, I have seen a fair bit of confusion around this title, which I totally understand, because the game was first announced several years ago, and then it got canceled in 2021, and then in 2023, it got announced a second time. So the reason for all this back and forth is a bit messy, but basically, they initially had a deal with Leyou Technologies where they were going to co-develop this Lord of the Rings MMO together. However, in the middle of development, Leyou got purchased by Tencent, and then after that buyout, Tencent and Amazon failed to come to terms on financial agreements. Basically, they couldn't agree on who got what amount of money, and so the project got canceled. And then a few years later, Amazon themselves struck a new deal directly with Middle-earth Enterprises, and this one did get the official stamp of approval. They're not co-developing with anyone else, it's just internal to Amazon, and so now they're back in business. And as of 2023, yes, Amazon Games has been working on that new Lord of the Rings MMO. So we know the game is going to feature stories from The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings literary trilogy, and that's basically all we know. Now, I think...
Don't give me hope, man. Don't give me hope, man. I love the Lotro. I love Lord of the Rings Online. It's a game that I often re-download and play for a day and then undownload and re-download and repeat over the past, couple years. I really want a good Lord of the Rings game. MMO specifically. I really hope but it's Amazon Games, dude. I hope they really turn their shit around, dude.
It's also safe to assume that it's going to build off of the framework and any lessons learned with the other MMO that Amazon has developed, that being New World.
Yes.
They published a couple of others, but New World is the only one that Amazon Game Studios themselves developed from scratch. So there are probably going to be some similarities with the New World's framework structure. Again, all of the lessons learned that will be taken into and improved upon, obviously, ideally, in this Lord of the Rings game. Now, the most recent news that we got on the game came late last year. In an interview with Variety, Amazon Games VP was asked when we could expect to hear more about their upcoming project, to which he replied by saying, "It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's not too far away. As I said, we're getting into a much more regular cadence of shipping games. That's all I'm allowed to tell you right now. It's all about quality. You don't want to just be rushed out. That doesn't work. It has to be AAA quality because the bar is so high." See, they're already learning lessons from New World. They're pretty much saying, hey, you know what? We have some experience with shipping games too early in the past. It didn't go all too well, so we're hoping to not repeat that mistake. Now, a couple months after that interview, he had another interview with IGN where he said, "The game is still early. It's a big IP. It's a big game. I know you're going to fish now probably every little word and try to read into it, but honestly, it's too early to read into every little word. We're still trying to find the hook, find the idea of what it is, because we don't just want to go do the same thing over. While it's tempting sometimes with an existing IP, that's not the point of doing it. You've got to find a fresh twist, and we're still, I think, in that period where we really want to find out what could be the thing which is different to all other games out there. So it's a little bit early." Now, this was in August of last year, so once more, this is another MMO where we're saying the game is probably at least 5 or so years out before we see it. Add it to the growing list. There's more of those coming in the rest of this video.
You heard it here, folks. Oh, geez. Well, why is it so loud? You heard it here, folks. 6 years, they'll have hopefully a good game.
As well. The Warhammer MMO being made by Jackalyptic Games, that is apparently still in production as well. Although...
What? Tell me more.
Well, this one, unfortunately, might be on shaky ground, and I say that because back in January, the company's partner studio, Counterplay Games, got shut down. Then in March, rumors began circulating that NetEase was looking to sell the studio as part of a larger plan to divest in overseas companies. And while that hasn't yet happened, the following month in April, we did see layoffs at Jackalyptic Games. Now, there has been no announcement of the game's cancellation, but none of that just mentioned stuff is great news, obviously. Now, the last official word we heard about the game was back in 2023 when they originally announced the project, followed by a press tour with several interviews. We still don't know which iteration of Warhammer it's going to be, whether it's fantasy, 40K, or otherwise. We just know it is Warhammer, it is going to be an MMO, and hopefully it hasn't been canceled. I will add one thing, though, that there were reports from earlier in this year, during a time when Jackalyptic was looking for some additional funding, and they were showing off the game in that process. At that time, it apparently received, quote, positive reception from potential partners, which is actually a pretty good sign. And I really hope this one doesn't get canceled, as there's just so much I love about Warhammer. It's such a great setting and IP, whatever Warhammer iteration they choose from, whether it was fantasy or 40K or otherwise. Warhammer is a cool setting for any MMO, so fingers crossed this one makes it through the development process.
Again, Warhammer Online is so fucking good. Return of Reckoning, I have streamed it, I have played it. I played it a lot, actually. In a lot of PvP. It's a really fun game. It's a private server, too. That's why we should always support Stop Killing Games. Remember, guys, it's almost over now.
And eventually into our hands. Rumor has it that Daybreak Games is currently working on another new full-blown EverQuest MMO. This comes from an investor call back in 2023 when the company shared their plans for upcoming first-party releases. On their list was a new EverQuest, and the detailed breakdown of it said this would be a fantasy MMORPG. Of course, it was being developed by Daybreak Games. It would be a live service with a hybrid premium and microtransaction business model, our favorite, and it was going to cost them apparently roughly $30 million to make, which sounds low for an MMO, like exceptionally low. But the one thing I'm not sure about is if this was the cost that they were proposing to these particular investors, and the total funding for the MMO might be much larger, but they were asking these investors at that time for 30 million or whatever. Other thing worth noting here on this list is that the game evidently had a target release of 2028. And it looks like their proposal did go forward and is currently underway. In an interview last November, Daybreak executive producer Jen Chan shared some details on the project, saying that active work on a new EverQuest game was in fact happening, although they aren't calling it EverQuest 3 given the relative failures of EverQuest 2. Instead, they're kind of thinking of it and referring to it as a rebooting of the original with modern graphics, updated gameplay, and a new visual style, all while feeling familiar to the first game. Now that said, again, it's still in early production. Specifically at the time of the interview, they said that the game was in the concept phase, so even that 2028 release target window seems very unlikely. We might be looking at another 2030 at the earliest MMO. It's great, dude. The genre. Just loving it, right? Riot's League.
So before they move on to that, before he moves on to the Riots, because I really want Riot to make a great MMO. But when it comes to what's this? Wait. Oops, sorry about that. When it comes to Riot's MMO, or EverQuest, I recently had bought in Pantheon a while back, and it's supposed to be like the same idea, right? Where it requires you to group up and all this stuff with people, have an economy. It's based on EverQuest, in the original systems of EverQuest. And I gotta say, it's like, as much as I enjoyed it at first, right, it comes down to this thing where it's like it falls short to other MMOs, right? Because even though we say, like, our old nostalgia goggles say that we want these old games to be, new games or like the old games, but it's like people can't ever. It's like once there's these quality life things that exist, it's so hard for people just to be like, all right, never mind. It's like when they invented shoes, right? It's like, all right, now we have shoes. Like, we don't need to, we can walk and protect our feet now. And then someone goes like, oh, but don't you miss when we just didn't have shoes? Like, oh yeah, that was great. But it's I don't know. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but you get the idea.
League of Legends based Runeterra MMO that is still alive and kicking. You may have heard a while back about the game restarting development as they scrapped several years of work to start fresh from scratch. The reason given was that they felt the game was too similar to existing MMORPGs, and they really wanted it to be more than the same old thing with a League of Legends coat of paint. And so they started over. Now in that process, several top developers left the company. Riot also saw a round of layoffs, or two, and they they said that they would be going dark on the project for some while. Still, it does seem like they are indeed making progress. In fact, just earlier this year, when asked if he thought MMOs were still worth pursuing, Riot's Mark Merrill said, "Oh yeah, and it's probably the project I personally spend the most time on as well," going on to add, "I can go through all of the laundry lists of why it's hard, but you know, I think Riot's exactly the type of company that should go after these types of opportunities if we're trying to make it better for the player."
Yeah.
And with the League IP, we've been investing so much for so long over time, sort of growing this world and adding dimensions. People want to run around in the world of Runeterra, and so we want to help them do that in ways that are worth it and meaningful to them. So yes, it does seem like the game is still in development. It still exists, but once more, many years from releasing. You might remember Core Punk,
Forrest,
that
you're killing
top-down
me here.
MMO that plays like a MOBA. The game actually entered early access last November, if you hadn't heard, and since then it has been moving along with some regular updates. In fact, I jumped in recently and was actually pretty impressed with some of the changes they had made. The core game is still everything that I remember. It is still a relatively slow and methodical MMO, but there's also been a ton of quality of life improvements from, again, the last time that I had played it. Loot actually drops now, like on a regular basis. In prior test, I think it took me like 10 hours before I was able to craft my first weapon, and now weapons drop all of the time, even in higher rarities too. Same goes with the gear, known as implants or artifacts. This is basically where most of your character power comes from. Previously, you had to either craft or purchase these. Now they are consistently dropping from enemies' chest and quest rewards. Also,
So I didn't know about this one. This one looks really interesting.
I'm like 99.9% sure that at some point they increased the movement speed in the game as well. It seems to have been boosted by like 10 or 15%. On top of that, you also get your first mount around level 7, just a few hours in. They finally added out of combat health and mana regeneration. It did exist prior, but only when you were above 90% health or mana. Now, whenever you leave combat, you get a little bit of mana return, and then you can accelerate it with food and drink. Resources and items are dropping much more frequently. They're just far more abundant, and that is just scratching the surface of some of the quality of life updates that I
See, quality of life, right? So like this MMO, it really is different. This is back to that Pantheon point, where it's like your nostalgia card says you want these whole MMOs, but like systems like that, you know. I mean, then again, never mind. I guess World of Warcraft kind of did that for a while, but yeah, you know what I mean? It's like you can't really live without them. You can't really make a new game without them. That's the problem. That's the problem that I notice MMOs are having, is that like they want to break the formula, but the formula is what keeps people there.
I've noticed in the couple of days that I've played so far. Now, beyond all that, there also looks to be a lot more content, new areas, new activities, dungeons, PvP modes, and more. All around, the reason I'm saying all this is just like, I've been impressed coming back to this, the progress they've made throughout the months of early access. I'm planning to plug away and play a bunch more over this next week, and I will be doing an updated look at the game at some time soon. That said, I will add one major hurdle that they have yet to clear is the fact that the game is not on Steam. I know that when I streamed the game the other day, no exaggeration, like every 4th or 5th comment was people asking, is this game on Steam yet? And the answer is no. So while yes, it is technically playable right now, if you are waiting for a Steam release, we are still in the dark about if and when that will be happening. I think it's in the developer's best interest. In fact, my suggestion would be keep improving the game, make it as good as you can, add more content, continue to work on the quality of life, and then when you eventually hit 1.0, a Steam release is going to give you the greatest chance of success.
We're going to be downloading that.
Light No Fire. Okay, this one isn't a traditional MMO, but it is claiming to be one massive shared world where you're going to run into other players. If you're in the same space, you will see other people. No phasing or instancing, from what I understand.
Is this the No Man's Sky one?
They're also claiming that this is going to be one massive, like real life size massive planet. And yeah, I mean, if all in a fantasy world, that sounds interesting. Either way, yeah, it looks like they at least fall into the shared world or MMO light category, and that leaves me keen to see more. Now, as for recent news, nothing. Zilch. Like, they announced the game in late 2023. They did a couple of interviews, but it has been dead silent ever since. All the while, they have been trucking away with consistent updates for their other game, No Man's Sky. And I know there's a lot of anticipation for this next game. I know that personally, I love the idea of a fantasy spin on the No Man's Sky formula. They're also said to be leaning more into the survival crafting element with much improved combat as well. It is a fantasy game with sword and sorcery. You'll be swinging swords and casting spells. world, all with this action combat system, and I really hope they nail it. That would be awesome. Hope amongst the community is that we get some sort of an update in the next few months, but really that's all it is as of now. Hope. There's been no tease that will be happening. On the plus side,
they have to stick to landing. Hello Games has to stick to landing with that MMO that they're coming out with. They can't do the same thing they did happen with No Man's Sky, where, you know, they've accrued so much good faith. They've accrued so much good faith from No Man's Sky because of how they handled it and the work they put in. But all that good faith can be just like that, just gone, right? If they put out this MMO and it's not good.
Though the game is rumored for a 2026 release window, so if that happens, that would be pretty nice.
Yeah.
Also, I want to mention Soulframe here as well. I genuinely have really enjoyed what I've played of this game so far. While it isn't also a full-blown MMORPG, instead it is once more a shared world or MMO-like game, you are still going to see other people much in the same way you do in something like Destiny. So they're currently in active development running public playtests referred to as preludes on a fairly regular basis. The last time I played a few months ago, this consisted of a couple of days worth of content, maybe a week if I'm being generous. It had one large open island to explore, dotted with all sorts of POIs.
Oh, that's what this game is.
Underground dungeons, multiple weapons and different playstyles to mess around with, and then a few tracks of progression and collectible cosmetic unlocks. I think the world building in this thing is fantastic. I love the look of the game. Combat does need some tune-up, but it's not terrible, and it does appear to be getting better with subsequent updates. In fact, they're currently on the 9th.
What is this armor set, guys? What is this armor? Look at this. It's such a funny hat.
10th round of Prelude testing. I think I was playing on the 4th or 5th, and most recently they had an update video for the current Preludes test with some new magic weapons and improved combat, and it's looking like it's shaping up quite nicely. I am definitely going to be revisiting the game at some point, maybe soon. I'd like to see some of the new updates for myself, and I'm also, I'll say it, I'm pretty confident that when all is said and done, this is probably going to be a game I like. Like, I've really enjoyed even just the limited amount of content that I've played in what's currently available for testing. I do think there's a good chance that they could repeat the success that they had with Warframe here, which would be quite impressive. In terms of release, we do know that they were initially targeting a 2025 launch.
I like that a lot.
If that happens, it would 100% be under the early access banner because the game is still in technically happens. It would 100% be under the early access banner because the game is still in technically alpha phase. But as of today, no exact dates have been set. A couple of honorable mentions I want to talk about here. Ashes of Creation. You know, I continue to want to be excited for this game, but every time I jump back in to play it for these tests that they have, something just doesn't quite click for me. Nevertheless, I am holding out hope that it all comes together as they get nearer the finish line. And when will that be? Well, anyone's guess, really. Certainly doesn't appear like it's going to be anytime soon, given the current state of content in the game compared to what they've proposed launching the 1.0 finished version with. It looks like they're a far ways off, although everyone keeps telling me that they are in a phase of development where Intrepid will be cranking out content faster than you can believe, which, okay, yeah, I don't believe it, but then they're also saying that I shouldn't believe it, so your move, I guess. I don't know, dude. You know, this thing pulls directly from ArcAge, which was one of my all-time favorites, so for that reason alone, I'm rooting for them. Like, let's go, Steven. I hope your dreams come true, and this thing is a massive success. In terms of that release, the game is currently in Alpha 2 to be exact. I'm guessing 2028 at the earliest for 1.0, probably later. Although, again, it is one of those games where you can technically play right now if you're willing to fork up $100.
Hey, what's up, dude?
I would suggest waiting. Stars Reach. You know, I was a little iffy on this game originally, but honestly, the more that I've seen, the more I've liked it. Now, they recently released videos of some graphical improvements they've made, and the game is looking far better already, even in its early stages. On top of the fact that they do have some neat systems and features. This is said to be a sci-fi sandbox MMO that pulls inspiration from the likes of Star Wars Galaxies. Go anywhere, do anything. They got a player-driven economy, housing, action combat, and a, quote, simulated living galaxy for us to explore. The game is right now in active development. They have already run a few play tests that I think lasted like a day at a time, and they are targeting some persistent 24/7 alpha testing to start sometime in the coming months. Definitely keeping my eye on this, and will check it out myself. Another MMO in very early development that I'm keeping an eye on.
What is this?
Ghost, the project from Fantastic Pixel Castle.
What are you?
They've had a really open process, going as far as to show us some super pre-alpha prototype builds with very stripped down visuals and releasing
What are you?
blog posts diving into their design philosophies. One thing I'm not so sure about with this game is the emphasis on the procedural world generation for about half of its content. So to set a clear expectations, this isn't an MMO that's going to have one massive predefined open world to explore. Rather, it's broken up into two different zone types called blue zones and red zones, and you load into these areas. So the blue zones are apparently more survival, crafty, sandboxy with some roguelite elements in there, whereas the red zones are more traditional, handcrafted areas that will feel much more like the zones you're used to in traditional MMORPGs. So when playing Ghost, apparently we're spending our time going back and forth to these areas, loading into a blue zone, doing some stuff, leaving, then going into a red zone, back and forth and back and forth. Now, honestly, I haven't dove that deep into this particular game. Like, I don't know much more about it beyond that, but I have liked their concept art, some of the ideas that I have seen, and I'm hoping it turns out well. The game is in pre-alpha, probably. Definitely is a long ways away from release. So again, don't expect this anytime soon. There is apparently still hope for that Horizon MMO that we've talked about in the past. Now, this was rumored to be canceled by NCSoft. That started circulating earlier in the year, but then later got clarified that the canceled game wasn't actually the Horizon MMO, but instead was another game that went by Project H internally. Big question mark here. Absolutely uncertain. No idea. It may have been X'd. It may still exist, but again, I did want to mention it. Also, IO Interactive, the studio behind the massively successful Hitman games, they are working on what looks to be an MMO light. A couple of years ago, they revealed Project Fantasy, and to quote the announcement, "We are building a new world, a new IP, an online fantasy RPG, a world and a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come." So they say that.
Now, see, this draws some worry about our first article that we went through, right? Because now we're seeing that IO Interactive is pushing out the iOS thing. They're still doing content for this. They're doing another First Light, which is a huge IP, and then they're also have a team on this. It's like when you start hearing these studios being separated and dissected in all these different areas, it's like I just hope they're not pulling away talent from each one. You know what I mean? And instead of taking their time with each game and giving it its due justice, man.
The game is inspired by the fighting fantasy books many of us grew up reading, compelling you to choose your own path, be it alone, against wizards, lizards, and thief kings, and that combined with the togetherness, camaraderie, and agony and delight found around the tabletop. Now, given how great those Hitman games are, I think just the pitch alone is enough for me. If they are making an online multiplayer fantasy game in a shared world, I am interested. This was initially revealed in 2023, and hopefully we learn more sometime soon. Now, it probably goes without saying, but this isn't an exhaustive list of every upcoming MMO. Check out our list that has become an annual tradition for like the past 10 years or something if you want a more exhaustive breakdown. These are just the ones that are most on my radar currently. There's actually quite a fair few more in development games, but I did want to focus on the ones near the top of my personal list, or more specifically, the games that are in development that I am theoretically most interested in, and praying don't get canceled before we get the chance to check them out. It is quite a shame that many of the games on this list look to be at least 3, 4, or 5+ years away. Such is the state of the MMORPG genre. But there you go. That does it for today. The look at some of the MMOs you can still look forward to after the cancellation of Zos's Blackbird, which I think it's gonna hurt for a while. Man, the game that they were making sounded really interesting, but we got some other games that also sound interesting, and hopefully these ones don't get canceled. Fingers crossed, right? Thanks. That's it for
Fingers
today.
Crossed,
Appreciate
dude.
you guys. I'll see you in the next one.
Wow, what a great video. I watched that video. I said, wow, what a great video. Where's the share button? You already like it? We liked it off rip. So that's super good, guys. Check that out. Support Force Gaming. This is one of those guys that he's like one of these reviewers that I tend to like every game that he reviews, or like that he gives his thumb of approval on. So really watch his stuff, man. Like him, subscribe, do whatever you gotta do. That dude's awesome. Totally worth it.